Well, good morning. I'm Reverend Tom Capo, minister here at DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church, and we also welcome all those who are joining us on YouTube. Today we will explore play and how play might affect your spiritual journey. This service will be a little different today. It will offer you opportunities to play. And please keep in mind that you can pass on any of these opportunities. If you choose to pass, please take the opportunity to observe what's happening around you with sort of a sense of childlike wonder. Now, you can also record some of your observation. There's a little section in the order of service for things that you might want to write about. So if you have any observations you want to share with me about the service, you can do that. So we're going to start with one opportunity for play. Gemma and I have decided that a few times during the service today, there'll be an image projected to your left. It may seem kind of out of place about why is there an image of waves up there? And that's fine. It isn't out of place. It actually is there for a reason. And the reason is to offer you an opportunity to play. What we're going to do, Gemma, if you will join me, is when the image is up there, don't do this yet, Gemma will gong the gong the first time, and you will have the opportunity for a few moments to imitate what you see on the image in any way you choose. And in a few moments after that, Gemma will bang the gong one more time, and you can stop. There are many ways to play, so here is your first opportunity. That was fun. All right. And we're going to be a little playful today in other ways. So for our opening words today, I thought instead of some quote or something, I would reflect on some behaviors and attitudes that I've seen in Unitarian Universalists, or UUs, for those of you who've never heard of UUs before. So if you're new to the church, you might be surprised by some of these things. So I thought I'd share them with you, these attitudes, a little bit. Some UUs, for instance, think that socks are too formal for summer worship services. In some UU homes, even the cats or dogs get a vote on the family TV viewing. Remember, we are humans. We are part of the interdependent web of all existence. Some Unitarian Universalists consider Harry Potter and The Simpsons to be spiritual guides. I've heard some UUs considering taking a spiritual pilgrimage to Transylvania or to Wakanda. Yes, there really is a Transylvania, or there was. It's now in Romania, and Unitarian Universalists date back to the 16th century there. But no, there is no Wakanda. I mean, you can watch it on television if you want, but it's not a real place. You might also notice that Unitarian Universalists have at least 5 different ways to say Happy Holidays. And in many Unitarian Universalist homes, a Christmas, winter solstice, or Passover tree might have a Buddha, a Hindu Om, a Tao symbol, a pagan pentacle, or a Jewish star ornament on it. Or, as in my house, a Buddha with a Santa Claus hat. Each to his own. I've actually heard some Unitarian Universalists light chalices for many different reasons in their homes. They have them in different places. Even brushing their teeth, they light a chalice. And of course, all Unitarian Universalists consider coffee hour, the time between and after services, a sacred time. Play often has grains of truth embedded in it. So some of the things you heard and some of the things we'll see and hear and sing today have grains of truth. So I invite you to rise for our first hymn. It's a hymn called Forward Through the Pages. Now, when I was an early Unitarian Universalist, this was a very popular hymn. course, that was 40 or 50 years ago. The words will be projected to your left.
Exercise today, one that I learned last summer in seminary. Meadville actually offers a class on improv for ministry as a reminder to stay flexible because life is often unpredictable. If you feel silly, that's okay. Move your body in whatever way is comfortable to you. This exercise can be done sitting or standing up, and moving as little or as much as you feel comfortable with. So it's a countdown exercise where we move our body from head to toe, and I'll begin a countdown from 8, starting with the head, and eventually making it down to my feet, and I'll show you.
Oh, okay. I don't know what you're going to do.
So we start with our head. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it helps to stand, but if you don't want to, you don't have to. Is there anyone brave enough who feels ready, feels called to stand? All right, let's do it.
All right.
All right. And you can count along with me, too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 2. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. Woo!
So I wanted to do some reflections on play too. When I left my first job, I tried to think of some parting words of wisdom to share. I was close to many of my colleagues, and I still am actually, and instead of opening the floor to embarrassing stories, I thought I would share something myself. Although I left that job 5 years ago, I still believe in what I said. I had boiled down the virtues of life into two main ones: kindness and silliness. Kindness maybe is obvious. Kindness as opposed to nice. Nice isn't bad, but it's more like being polite or having certain manners. For instance, it's nice to not slurp your soup. But it's not necessarily kind. Kind works for the ultimate good of all, with the goal that all feelings are honored and all needs are met. Silliness is the curveball that I threw in there. Why silliness? Because it makes greater kindness possible. During the Great Depression in the 1930s, one of the most popular movie genres was extravagant musicals. Elaborate sets and dozens of dancers in glittery costumes. A sharp contrast from life outside the movie theater. Viewed through a realist lens, these movies make no sense. I've never once started humming to find myself backed by an entire orchestra and twirling in unison with everyone nearby. Some might even find it offensive, and it does take the right context. But the power of silliness is real. Last year, I had a rather challenging year, and many of us did. World news was not looking great, and my personal life news was also not looking so great. So I did what any normal person would do. I went to clown camp, and I became Chrysalis the Clown, as you can see. You see, the worse things are, the more silliness I needed to add to my life to balance things out. I needed to play fun songs on the ukulele, to watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine and drag queen videos. It wasn't extravagant, and it wasn't something extra. It didn't always work, but to the extent that I was able to show kindness to anyone, to be a compassionate spouse or sister or friend or advocate, it is because of the power of silliness, and that's not a joke.
Like for Petey Kubak to be the youngest of 20 or so very talented children and an extremely talented father. Last Sunday we heard one of our young people beautifully play a piece by one of Petey Q's older brothers, who is very much admired today. With that kind of competition, is it any wonder that he had to leave home? So, we don't know very much about where he went, but when we get to the next movement, you will see the Turkish influence, so we think he was in Turkey for a while. Right now, you're going to notice that he had a great deal of interest in trying to develop different ways of using instruments, and for that matter, different instruments. You've got to remember, before he was born, there wasn't such a thing as a saxophone, and it wasn't until the 20th century that composers started exploring with things like taxi horns and such in their music. So here's Petey Kubak, way ahead of his time, doing all sorts of interesting things. Hope you enjoy it.
We are now entering into meditation time, maybe even a kind of communion. In a moment, I'm going to invite the ushers forward to distribute some silly putty. And this is silly putty that my sister and I made at home. From one communal batch, we are each receiving our daily dose of silly putty. So we'll invite you to come forward. If you just pass it through, to just take a little piece similar to bread with communion and start to play with it. Yes. And if you got the tin foil, it's just to keep it off of your lap. It can stick to clothes and fabric and chairs, but yes. So that's just to keep it a little bit contained, as much as you can contain silly putty. We'll just wait till everybody gets some. I invite you to squish the silly putty and mash it up in your hands. Smell the silly putty, that weird industrial rubbery smell. Don't taste the silly putty. It's not meant for consumption. Look at its shape, its physical properties. My sister has the whole batch of it. That's so funny. Okay. What does it sound like when you snap it apart? It makes a cute little popping noise sometimes. Or when you knead it in your hands. Like us, silly putty is already awesome, without being sculpted or shaped into anything else. Like us, the putty bends and breaks, and like us, it is reconnected and healed. Amen, and blessed be.
I'm getting a microphone. Hey, where? You got one, and I'll get one. So, in preparation for this service today, I read a book called Finite and Infinite Games, A Vision of Life as Play and Possibility by Professor Emeritus of History and Literature of Religion at New York University, James P. Carse. Now, Carse said that to tell a story, just because you are telling a story is the best way to tell a story. He says if you're telling a story for a purpose, trying to change someone's opinion, for instance, it's not really play. You're doing something to try to get something from it. But to create a story out of nothing, just to tell a story, is a wonderful thing. And not only that, a really good story compels us to retell it in our own way, through our own voice, through our own hearts, and to retell it again for the joy of retelling it. And it spreads throughout as people retell it because it touches something in them. So today we're going to tell a story. Gemma and I are going to have a microphone, and we're going to allow each of you the opportunity to do a line. Now, not everybody may choose to participate. You can pass. But I'll start the story, and then if you have a line, raise your hand, and either Gemma or I will come over, and you can say your line, and we'll create a story today. Are you ready? All right. Once upon a time, there was a Unitarian Universalist who... Somebody, Nick? Oh, okay. Chris almost raised his hand.
Who really liked to play with dirt.
Okay. Another line. Really liked to play with dirt.
And he was out playing in the dirt, and he met a turkey. Gobble, 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 gobble.
And because of that, someone else have a line? Ah, here we are.
He decided to eat it.
Ooh.
But then the turkey started to talk to him and begged for its life.
Okay.
And then the Unitarian Universalists decided to grow more corn for the turkey.
But then he realized corn takes a long time to grow. So,
Go ahead.
So he went to the store and bought some.
And because of that, here we go. And ever since then,
The turkey suggested some delicious corn recipes, and they decided to open a restaurant together.
the end. Now, if you tell the story in coffee hour, remember the nuances. And some people say that organizing Unitarian Universalists is like herding cats. Amen. Yet you were able to tell a story together. Now, Kars is his name, Kars, said there were two kinds of games. There are finite games and infinite games. Finite games are games like Monopoly, football, poker. Infinite games are games like having a tea party for your stuffed animals, or playing hide and seek or tag, or pretending you are a kitten is an infinite game. So I need the microphones again for just a second. So we have finite games and infinite games. Finite games, Monopoly. What are some of the characteristics of a finite game? Anybody? There's a winner and a loser. That's correct. Any other particular characteristics?
A defined ending.
A defined ending. That's right. There are rules.
Rules, yeah.
Oops.
Sorry.
That's all right. Anything else? There's usually more than one person playing, right? You have to have someone in order to win. So that's a part of a finite game. Yeah? Oh, yes, there's always closure with finite games. So what are some of the characteristics of infinite games? All right. Playing house, okay. Somebody, we got a few here. All right.
It can continue for many days.
It can continue for a long time.
It's very open-ended. The players sort of define it as it goes.
Right. The rules can change, the boundaries can change, things can change.
Creativity is often sort of a necessity.
And creativity is a necessity. That's exactly right. So you can play a finite game during an infinite game. It's like you can play cards while you're having a tea party, right? But it's really difficult to play an infinite game while you're playing a finite game. My son did this when he was younger. He played soccer, and what he liked to do was stand out in the soccer field and kind of look up and look at the shapes in the clouds and kind of figure out what they were. He didn't ever become a star soccer player. But so it's more, there's some problems with that. I mean, you could do it, but it doesn't really work out as well. So what Kars is saying is, oh, there you are. I thought I'd lost my worship partner here. What Kars says is that there's one other characteristic we need to take into consideration when we consider infinite games, and finite games as well, is that playing a game is a choice. It's not play if it's not a choice. So for instance, if you have to take a gym class and you're required in the gym class to play basketball or for a grade, that's not play. But if you are with your friends and you're out playing, you're out and you decide to play basketball together, it's a pickup game, and whoever makes however many scores is no big deal. That's a choice. So part of this about play is that play is a choice. So as we begin to look at play today a little bit, play is a choice. It's not something you just do. Like professional football players, that's not a choice. That's, they are contracted to do that. So how does this relate, this idea of infinite finite games relate to religion and spirituality? Well, Kars says that our exploration of spirituality is an infinite game. Now let that sink in for a moment. He says that what we do to try to figure out what we believe, what we think, what we value, our ideas that we take in as important and meaningful, that's an infinite game. We're always kind of testing things, trying things on, see how they work, playing with them, if you will. And we do that for a lifetime. And the purpose of an infinite game, and I think we heard that earlier, was the purpose of an infinite game is to continue to play. It's not to end, it's not to win, it's not any of those things. It is to continue to play. And that's part of this thing about spirituality and religion as well, is that it's a continuous process. It doesn't stop. Now, we can stop. We can choose not to play, and there are people that do that. Perhaps people who choose to keep the religion of their parents, or who choose to stay with the religion they were raised in, or who choose to have a certain spiritual belief that they grew up with. They don't play with it. But we tend to, as Unitarian Universalists, we tend to play with various ideas. I, for instance, have said to you all before that I'm a Buddhist, panentheist, humanist, Unitarian Universalist. And I suspect many of you would have difficulty describing your spirituality in one word. So when I say I'm a Buddhist, I sort of say I'm sort of a Zen Buddhist. I'm not 100% Zen Buddhist, and I think that label is kind of limiting, but it gives you an idea of what I'm playing with. So I've played with Zen Buddhism long enough that I have chosen certain aspects of it that I consider important for me. I practice Zazen meditation, mental non-attachment, mindfulness, loving kindness. And I practice these with commitment and with reverence. But I realize I'm just playing with them because they may change. As my life changes, as my experiences change, as I change, as I evolve. I've also played with prayer. The prayer I use today, I usually start with some name for a divinity, whichever comes to mind as I begin. And then I honor the many blessings in my life, the good things that have happened to me and those I love. And then I offer loving kindness and healing to those people that are suffering. And I usually start with people I know, and then it goes out to all people who are in suffering. Now, that's not what it was when I first started prayer. When I first started prayer, I was a Catholic, and I did the Our Father and the Hail Mary. And then when I was no longer a Catholic, I began to play with prayer. I said, well, maybe, I don't know, is this something I really want in my life? And for a while I said no. And then I started, experimenting. Using different prayers from different religions and different authors. There was a time in my life I even said, "Dear God, if there is a God, please save my soul. If there is a soul, There was a time in my life early on early in Unitarian Universalism, where I said something to the effect of whoever it may concern. Today, I'm drawn to prayers that have more playfulness in them. One of those kind of prayers comes from one of our Unitarian forebearers, Theodore Parker. He was a transcendentalist. He loved nature. And this is one of the beginnings of one of his prayers. It starts, "O thou infinite one who dwellest not only in temples made by hands, but are a presence, living and moving and having thy being in every star that flowers above and every flower that flames beneath." Isn't that nice? I like playing with those. Now, those are personal things. That's my personal spiritual playfulness. But let's say that we want to play with others. Well, then, Kars calls that religion. We come together in infinite play with each other as Unitarian Universalists in this congregation to play. And I think many of us have tried on various ways of being spiritual and being religious, of trying on different ways of praying, meditating, taking on different beliefs and thoughts, trying on different morals and values. But in a community where we can talk to each other about it, even play with each other. Our religion has been playful from the very beginning. We started out as a religion that believed differently than most other people. We believed Jesus was a person rather than a divine being. And then we played with it a little bit more, and we said, well, our religion is more about living in the here and now than what happens after this. And we played with it a little bit more, and we became more pluralistic, knowing that there was more things to play with out there. The Transcendentalists brought over to the United States Hinduism and Buddhism. And we often hear in this church, we hear things like, revelation is not seals, our beliefs are not static, that we are beings, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual beings in process. Now, we can be playful with each other in this, and that's great, and I find that to be wonderful to do, but we have to also be careful, because sometimes when we take on something that we consider very reverent, something we're very committed to, when somebody says something in a playful way, it might be hurtful to someone. Not intentionally, the person that said it was being playful. But it still might hurt that person's feelings. And if it does, what I say to you is that we need to stop the game at that point. Say, oh, I didn't know it hurt you. Let's talk. Let's stop for a moment. What hurt you about this? And get to know what was the impact of that playfulness. And then forgive one another and begin to play again in the spirit of love. I'll share one of Kars's quotes from his book. He says, the myths of Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad are exemplary, but not necessary. No myth is necessary. There is no story that must be told. Stories do not have truth that sometimes, stories do not have truth that someone needs to be exposed to, needs to hear. It is not necessary for infinite players to be Christian. Instead, it is not possible for anyone to be absolutely Christian. Neither is it possible for them to be absolutely Buddhist, absolutely Muslim, absolutely atheist, or absolutely Chicagoan. Seriously, all such titles are playful abstractions. Infinite players are not serious actors in any story, but playful poets of a story that continues to originate what they cannot finish in a lifetime. He says that religion and spirituality are one infinite game. As Unitarian Universalists, we're doing something incredible, wonderful, awe-inspiring here. Something that's also sometimes very difficult, and yet enriching and rewarding. We're participating in this infinite game we call religion and spirituality. And we're doing it with one another. In this place that we consider safe and supportive and joyful and wonderful. And we'll continue to play, honoring each other's worth and dignity, respecting each other's beliefs, encouraging each other to grow spiritually and ethically as we affirm each other's search for truth and meaning. Self-help author Debbie Ford said, "Your soul is infinitely creative. It is alive and expansive in nature. It is curious and playful, changing with the tides of time." So my friends, as you go out into this community and go out into the world, in this infinite game we call spirituality and religion, I invite you, be curious, be creative, be playful. Open yourself to the possibility that as you play, you might change. And be prepared, because you might also grow in ways you never expected. Namaste.
A Buddhist monk approached a hot dog vendor for a veggie dog, saying, "Make me one with everything." When he received his lunch, he handed the vendor a $20 bill and waited and waited and waited until he had run out of patience. "What about my change?" the Buddhist said. The hot dog vendor smiled. "Change comes from within." While change comes from within, making a church with everything costs more than a $20 bill, so the offering for the work of this church will now be given and received.
And now we will extinguish our chalice, but let us carry that flame in our hearts as we prepare for our sacred coffee hour. So I invite you to rise in body or spirit and let us sing to that coffee, which is so important to so many of us. The words will be projected to your left. Coffee, 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 praise the strength of coffee. Early in the morn we rise with thoughts of only thee. Served fresh or reheat by thee defeated, brewed black by perk or drip or instantly. Though all if we scoff at coffee, we come in time for thee. Coffee our one ritual, drinking it habitual, brewed black by perk or drip or instantly. Coffee, the communion of our union, symbol of our sacred ground, our one necessity. Feel the holy power at our coffee hour, brewed black by perk or drip or instantly. I don't know if you've read this month's newsletter, but read it through and try to find the little playful pieces. They're sort of like Easter eggs throughout the newsletter. And let us close the service today with a smile. So look around you and begin to smile at those around you. Smile a little bigger. Come on, give us a big smile. Bigger than that. Come on, really big smile. Because smiles are what we need. Laughter, joy, happiness, giggles, play helps us be more resilient as we face the many not so great things in the world right now. Now, I invite you to turn around and greet one another, especially those you don't know. Let us share the love of this community with one another.